Hello, I'm CJ Wellerman, and in this episode, we reveal how Israel's genocidal activities in Gaza are inextricably tied to Israel's unique enthusiasm for sexual violence. But first, please don't forget to like and subscribe to our show. Now let's get into it. Thanks to a new report by the Associated Press, the world now knows that almost everything Israel has said about October 7th is a fabricated and concocted lie, meant only to provide the Zionist state political cover for its atrocities in Gaza. Tragically, however, these lies perform their intended job, because bogus allegations of Hamas mass raping Israeli women ran 24/7 around the world for months on end, which in turn juiced America and Europe's tolerance for Israel's campaign of terror in Gaza and the West Bank. Which means every major news publication that laundered these lies has the blood of murdered Palestinian children on their hands. The New York Times, BBC, CNN, and all the rest are now complicit in genocide. And this moral stain should follow every editor and publisher to his grave. For they have fallen for a trick Zionists learnt from the Nazis: to accuse your enemy of the very thing that you're guilty of doing to him. In other words, every Zionist allegation is a confession of wrongdoing. And in this case, no country is more guilty of sexual violence and criminality than the State of Israel. In fact, the Jewish state has been widely described a safe haven for pedophiles, having enacted laws that allow Jewish sex offenders to live freely in the occupied Palestinian territories, where they are free to commit their evil deeds. Even the right-wing Jerusalem Post agrees with this damning indictment, as does an English-speaking Israeli television network.
First of all, I'm very sad to say, but Israel is a country which has a pandemic of sexual violence. You can ask various questions why. Some of them can be answered as being a very conservative society. Still, parts of the country are conservative. We are a militaristic society, and that influences the way men treat women. And
more than 250 women are raped every day in a country whose total population is less than 9 million people, making Israel officially the rape capital of the Middle East, with the Palestinians, of course, their biggest victim. The data tells a shocking story, with underage girls accounting for nearly 50% of reported sexual abuse cases, while 92% of rape investigations are closed without charges laid, and as 75% of convicted sex offenders are released from prison early. Zionism is to blame for this sickness, a depravity that has perverted every level of Israeli society, especially among the country's armed forces, as witnessed in Gaza for the past 8 months. While committing genocide and killing more than 10,000 women, Israeli soldiers have routinely dressed in the clothing of their female victims and then proudly shared the pictures with friends and family members on social media. Because for Zionists, this is totally normal and acceptable behavior. Here, 2 soldiers pose for the camera as they sit in the bed of a young girl they had killed earlier that same day, while their comrades rummage through the bedrooms of Palestinian women in search of their underwear and personal items.
בבקשה, דבר ראשון. ממצא ראשון. יפה. או-אה. ממצא שני. גול נפש, מחבלים ארורים. לבן, כמו שצריך. מחבלים ארורים. ממש, כותנה, כמו שצריך, מוכן. החבר'ה פה, כמו שאתם רואים, שבוזים מהממצאים. מה שהם מצאו. חבר'ה, תהיו רגועים. אל תדאגו, שומרים עליכם.
Zionists are so shameless about their sex crimes that Israeli soldiers taunt Arab girls on the internet, saying they will stop killing Palestinians if they undress for the camera.
I'll tell you what, if you show me I won't kill any more Palestinian kids.
You killed 25 kids, like you're proud of that?
If you love Palestinians, you'll show me.
This is what happens when you establish a nation state on stolen land and then kill, dispossess and displace its indigenous population. And this is the kind of sexual violence Israel has dished out to Palestinians for decades. Because when we talk about Zionism, we are talking about an ethno-nationalist ideology that promotes racism, toxic masculinity, and militarization. All the key ingredients that underpin every fascist movement. You see, the Israeli military has long used rape and sexual assault as a weapon of war against Palestinians. Soldiers routinely sexually harass women at military checkpoints and detention centers in the occupied territories, while ordinary Jewish civilians wear t-shirts that encourage shooting pregnant Palestinian women because you get 2 kills for 1 shot. This constant dehumanization results in sexual atrocities and the violent interrogation of innocent Palestinian women like this. This is happening in Gaza right now. Even the United Nations has accused Israel of raping and sexually assaulting Palestinian women in the midst of this genocide. These women, along with eyewitnesses, describe harrowing experiences in which they are forcibly stripped, blindfolded, assaulted, brutalized and raped by Israeli soldiers who raided their homes and murdered their husbands. Here's testimony from Amina Hussein, who was kidnapped by Israeli soldiers on the 28th of December and held hostage for 6 weeks.
غششوني على ساحة على غرفة كبيرة كتير كانت أتفاجأ إن كل البنات مشلحات الأسيرات كل مشلحات يعني أنا بعد ما طلعت من الغرفة البنات بيقولوا لي ليش بتطلع قلت لهم أنا بتطلع أنا اتفاجأت إنه كلنا مشلحات.
So, while Israel is inventing stories of Jewish women being raped by Hamas, Israeli soldiers are actually raping and sexually assaulting female Palestinian hostages. That the media is now silent about this, even after the Associated Press debunked Israel's bogus allegations, is yet another painful illustration of how Israel has trained Western media outlets to believe the inverse of reality, that down is up, black is white, and day is night. Because no matter what crime Palestinians are subjected to, they are never allowed to be the victim. The Western media has reserved victimhood for Israelis, even when they commit genocide and rape. Call it Holocaust guilt, call it Zionist manipulation, call it what you will. But with that said, CNN deserves some credit here, despite its shameful track record of whitewashing Israeli crimes. 2 weeks ago, it revealed an insight into Israel's torture chambers, where thousands of innocent Palestinian men, women and children are held, a horror that even Israeli human rights activists are now protesting against.
At the Sedi Taman facility in southern Israel, we joined human rights activists amid growing public concern for the detainees being held inside. This is a protest by Israeli citizens outside a detention centre close to Gaza, where we know hundreds of Palestinians have been held. You can see it's a closed military facility. It's behind a barbed wire fence. We're not permitted access. There's hostility from passers-by.
If you look closely at a sign that was held by one of the Israeli protesters, then you will see that it speaks to the recent killing of a Palestinian man who was killed by Israeli soldiers who shoved an electric stick into his anus. This is Zionism. This is Israel. This is where Palestinian men are routinely subjected to sexual torture, including forced nudity in freezing conditions, kicks or strikes to the genitals, along with threats of rape and sodomization, and actual cases of rape and sodomization. It's also important to recognize that an overwhelming majority of male Palestinian detainees who languish in Israeli military detention centers are held without charge or trial. In other words, they are hostages, no different to the hostages held by Hamas in Gaza, although Israel is holding nearly 40 times as many. But, as I mentioned at the top of this episode, Israel has become a safe haven for pedophiles, which was why nobody should be surprised that Palestinian children are also subjected to rape and sexual assault. With one Israeli human rights group reporting that 69% of detained Palestinian children are stripped naked, while another group found that more than 40% of children are sexually assaulted in one way or another. Now I want you to think about that for a moment. Imagine your child being kidnapped by foreign soldiers from your home in the middle of the night and then taken away and stripped naked and assaulted in front of other threatening soldiers. You'd go after those soldiers with a vengeance. Here's what a former US State Department official had to say about Israel raping teenage boys as young as 13.
You mentioned sexual violence. I was part of the human rights vetting process for arms going to Israel, and a charity called Defense of Children International Palestine drew our attention at the State Department to the sexual assault, actually the rape of a 13-year-old boy that occurred in an Israeli prison in the Mosque Bia in Jerusalem. We examined these allegations. We believed they were credible. We put them to the government of Israel. And you know what happened the next day? The IDF went into the DCIP offices and removed all their computers and declared them a terrorist entity.
During a recent discussion about Gaza on TRT World, I said that Zionism has more in common with white supremacy and neo-Nazi beliefs than it does with the Jewish religion. These racist attitudes also drive Israel to commit acts of sexual violence against non-white Jews. In 2018, I wrote about how Ethiopian Jews are ruining the Zionist dream by diluting Israel's white European population. To quell this demographic change, the Israeli government carried out forced sterilizations on thousands of Ethiopian Jewish women, which is exactly the kind of evil that Nazis pulled off in the 1930s. It's what China is doing to Uyghur women in Xinjiang today, and this level of evil the Jewish state is willing to stoop to, even against Jewish people with the wrong skin color. As you can see, Zionism and sexual violence are inextricably linked. Please also see our recent episode in which we revealed how Israel used pornography as a weapon against Palestinian boys. Obviously, you will never see these reports in the mainstream media, which is why our show is dedicated to exposing the ugly truth about Israel and the Zionist ideology. Because once you understand that, then you will realize how this criminal enterprise can never be normalized and must always be opposed. But that's my time for today. Please don't forget to subscribe to this channel, and we kindly ask you please support our effort to expose and confront injustices in the Muslim world by becoming a member of this show at patreon.com/CJWerleman. We can't produce, sustain and grow the show without your help, and we offer exclusive benefits to those who do. But for now, good night, good morning, wherever you are, and stay blessed.